you can remember when you were a little boy?
that I ever knew.
That you ever knew? Who's the oldest person you ever knew?
Grandpa Jones's mother, great grandma Jones,
What was her first name?
Martha.
When was she born?
I believe she's born in 1833.
Okay.
That's about right.
Tell me about her. Tell me a little bit about her.
Well, back then, everybody was in the country. We didn't have nothing but what we grew. We eat. We planted our corn and ate the corn. Planted our beans and eat the beans. Planted our potatoes and eat our potatoes. And we picked wild blackberries.
Hey man, get the sugars all over us.
I picked the wild blackberries.
I have to.
And they were made of some good preserve. And we had cows, I think 3 or 4. We had 2 horses.
Where did you live when you were a little boy?
They were off of Smith Springs Road
Back up.
on Butler Road ends there where we live. Butler Road that we're talking about started at the Smith Springs Road. And then went about a half a mile up, I'd say,
Did you live?
west,
Tell me where you were born.
1913,
Where at?
on Stones River, Morris Farm.
Now tell me something about this lady you met when you were.
The lady I married,
Yeah, tell me about her a little bit.
I ain't got time to tell you. I fell in love with her. I know when I was in the 5th grade, and I never did leave me. Boy, she was a doll.
When did you
Had
guys
pretty
get?
brown eyes and black hair. She tore me all pieces.
When did you get married?
1935,
1930. What
March the 15th. I'll never forget it.
kind of a ceremony did you have? Where was it?
We
held?
had me and her, and Laurel and Audrey, and a preacher.
Where was it?
I don't know, somewhere around Smith Springs.
No, Franklin, Kentucky, wasn't it?
Well,
What is Franklin, Kentucky?
could have been.
Were you there?
There?
So in love with
I think I was there.
Okay. Tell me something about your children. Who was your first and second?
That's a wild one. Marjorie was the wildest.
When was she born?
She was born in 1936. And then there's another one come along, even I didn't think it could be any worse. But 1938, here comes Dot.
Oh my goodness. That was rough, wasn't it?
Man, I knew that was the bottom,
It was nothing but
But-
uphill after that.
but it wasn't.
I'll see you later.
1942, here comes Gene. Boy, I said, I'm dead. But 1944,
That's when
Oh.
Jesus was born, 19.
I had twins, Jackie and Joan.
Now they were born in what year? 1940?
1944,
No, 6.
Gene was born in
46.
4, and I.
Yeah,
Franklin in
and they were born in 46.
Yeah. And you had what? Twins?
Jackie and Joan were twins, born in 46.
And then,
And
Mm.
then,
Then-
and then there
who was the
came.
last one?
Richard Lee was the last one. I think we called it quits. I said, that's got to be it.
It's been trouble ever since.
1951. When he
1951. I was getting old, man. I was
What kind
Worried, I was worried. I had 6 kids.
Didn't you build a house?
I built a log house on Smith Springs Road in 1939.
Yep, what's
Who
up?
helped you?
Bishop Waldron, Harmon P., and maybe a couple of older men helped when it comes to framing. Mr. L. Creech and Mr. Henry Creech, they were older than us. But
Right.
they had built houses. They knew how.
What kind of job did you have? What kind of job?
I was working. I went to school at Donaldson.
Where did you live when you went to school at Donaldson?
I lived on Butler Road.
Okay, now didn't you have to skip a year because
Yeah,
of the Great
I
Depression?
skipped 1 year, didn't have nowhere to go.
Didn't have buses, did they?
Didn't have no bus.
So where did you live the next year when you went to high school?
Well, they changed the bus to
Okay.
another route where I could ride it.
Okay.
He lives with Uncle Jim.
Didn't you live with Uncle Jim?
And I lived with Uncle Jim part of
Part of it?
2 years, but not for a full year.
So you could walk to school?
Most of the time, I rode the bus.
Okay.
But when I lived with Uncle Jim, I walked.
Okay, and then when you said that you got a job at Jarman Shoes, right?
I went to work at Jarman Shoe Factory on Tuesday morning before I graduated from Johnson High School on Friday night.
Wow. You were lucky to have a job back in those days.
That was during the Depression. I was lucky.
What were you making at that time? How much money?
About $7 a week, 6 days,
$7 a week.
5.5 days,
Okay.
$7 a week. It wasn't long.
Now, after you started having children, what type of work did you get into?
Well, I worked for Jarman Shoe Factory for 9 years. And I had all the children except Richard. And I went to work for Voltaire.
That was during the war, wasn't it?
Huh?
That was when we were in war.
That was during the war. I think we were just building the wings. Well, we were building part of the airplane. We didn't build the motor.
When did you get into real estate?
I had a good friend that had a lot of money, owned Woodlawn Cemetery. He hired me. And pretty soon he made me manager of it. The old part was on the old side, and that's where the little old shack was. But Raymond Ligon was a good fellow. He treated me like I was a king. He made me manager in less than a year.
So when did you start getting into real estate?
I went to work for Turrentine Realty before I got into the cemetery business.
Okay.
I can't keep it.
Then you worked for Cooper Realty for a while. You worked for Cooper Realty for a while.
Yeah,
And then you changed and started your own business.
that's right.
You built that little building over there on Burkesville Road. Is that
That's right.
Now, Troy wanted me to ask you who your favorite grandson was, but he wanted to make sure that you said him, that Troy was.
Troy,
He wanted you to know that he was your favorite grandson, but I told him it was me, but I'll just leave that up to you.
well, you tell him that he's close.
Okay, I will.
I had about a half a dozen, and all of them were real close.
Yeah. Are you a good baseball player?
I was a baseball amateur player.
Now,
Pretty good pitcher for a while. I was managed a team at Smith Springs.
yeah, tell us about some of the ball players that were really good that you saw.
Willie Fergus played for me, but he'd already played. He had had some major league feeling. Yeah, Willie played for me.
And Uncle Bob.
Tell us about how hard Uncle Bob could throw.
Bob Russell played for me one game. He was left-handed. He didn't know how far and how hard he could throw on it. And the first inning, the first or second inning, he threw that ball up and that arm was folded. His left arm broke in two places.
Now, Steve wanted me to ask you a question about you possibly taking over Bobby Cox's job. Just first of all, tell us how good Bobby Cox was as a manager for the Braves.
Well, Steve knows all about that.
I know.
I had it sold up, but something happened. I don't know what happened.
You think you could have taken that job over?
I had it sold up more. And I don't know what happened. I ain't to this day. I never.
We're going to have to ask him down in Atlanta what happened.
So you had it sold up. Oh,
I ain't got me line.
they got you.
Tell them what you told me yesterday about the first whipping, or when you thought Papa was going to whip you and you were out in the field, he was plowing. Tell them about it. You were out in the field with Papa and you left.
Well, he told. I always went to the field with him and ride the horse.
Yeah.
And he said, don't you go back to the house without telling me. Well, we had two people that worked for us. I had two teams. One of them was Mike Woods, who was a black fellow, and the other one was Purdy Boner. Well, I never thought much about it. I told both of them when they come around, I said, tell Papa I'm going home to get Alice. We're going to pick some flowers. Well, about an hour later, I started toward home and I met Papa. Well, the story is in, I wetted my britches. I knew they were going to get whipped.
Papa was scared you, huh?
He scared the water out of me.
So tell me, what was Papa's favorite thing to do?
Play cards.
What was his favorite game?
Look,
No,
Was it rook or peanut?
both.
He did like both.
He always played rook until he learned how to play pinochle. Then he quit playing that and started playing pinochle. It's a lot more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What is pinochle?
Pinochle is cards you play with the regular pitch cards. Ace through the king.
What's the latest you ever played during the night? How late did you ever play during the night?
12:30, 1 o'clock at least.
Is that all?
Now maybe a little later, I can't say. Not many times. I wouldn't go all night with them. Some of them played all night.
They did. They really did. Can you lead us in Amazing Grace? And then the second verse is, when we've been there 10,000 years. That's the second verse. All right, the first verse, start it off.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise. And when we first begun. That's a long time.
Now sing How Great Thou Art.
Oh Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the world thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout this universe displayed. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Chris. You got the prettiest voice.
And I love to hear you sing.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about our grandparents, our Anna and Tim Russell.
Well, they were farmers. Mr. Tim Russell and Richard, Robert, Willard, and T.J. sons. But Richard and Robert were the two oldest and did most of the plowing.
Tell us about your brothers and sisters a little bit.
Well, my oldest sister was a half-sister, Lola. Papa married a Rosie Ellis in about 1900.
She died.
She had 4 children, Flora, Bessie, Forrest, and Audrey. And she died. And Papa married my mama, Leroy Jones. And they had my oldest sister named Alice. And I was number 2, oldest. Then Margaret was number 3. Irma was number 4. Nell was number 5. Pauline was number 6. James was 7. George was 8. That made 12. He raised 12 kids. He's a hard-working man. He had some wives that were hard workers too.
What year was Papa born?
1879.
And when was his father? Did you know him? Your granddad?
I knew Pappy, let's see. I'm gonna say around 1850. Grandpa Jones, he was about 6 or 7 years younger, but he remembered the soldiers come by there, they took whatever cows they wanted, horses or anything that they wanted, they took it.
J.M. was in World War II,
Yeah.
and can you tell anything about what he told you?
Sam threw 35 missions over Germany. He was a tail gunner. He shot out the engine a time or two, because they made it back. Papa was a hard-working country man as you ever saw. Farming, anything that you did on a farm. And Mama was right there beside him. In fact, business, she worked in that garden hoeing them potatoes and tomatoes and things a lot. They just worked hard as the country people had to. But you didn't have no money coming in.
So now, tell us a little bit about Smith Springs Church.
Miss Nancy Moore deeded it to him. She was an old widow lady that lived up there on the corner of Smith Springs and Anderson Road. That was where the spring was. I forgot exactly where she lived, but that was her property. And she deeded it to the church. When we first started to go into church, there was old Brother Tom Hill and Brother Sam Carver were two of the oldest men in that neighborhood. They were the leaders of the church. I'd say there wouldn't be more than 20, 30 people in church. Well, of course, we grew up. I grew up 1930-something, I became an elder. We had Eric Little was the elder, and Wesley Martin was an elder. Congregation began to grow. We got to where we were about 125. And then it exploded. If the lake came in, we had to move, but then after the lake came in, it exploded. I don't know, but I'd say somewhere between 300 and 400 members.
What would you tell young people today that they needed to do to make their life successful?
Number one, be sure you're right. Amen. And do what your mom and daddy and the ones in charge told you to do. You got to respect authority in school. Respect authority. And then you grow. But you ain't gonna grow if you don't have no respect for the higher up. You ain't going nowhere.
Do you remember when you first became a Christian?
Yes, I do. I was 11 years old. I was during the meeting. I I'm trying to think who was doing the preaching, but I believe it was Brother Carl. But I was 11 years old, and he was holding the meeting, and I was baptized.
Where did they baptize you then?
Huh?
Where were you baptized?
In the Stones River, down to Little Beach.
Yeah. Back then, they didn't have baptistries, so you had to go to the creek or river.
Well, we've had the Baptists for a long time. Been a lot of water gone over the dam.
Or under the bridge.
But I'll
one.
tell you, back then, you had neighbors. And I don't mean it's just somebody you knew. They were neighbors. You needed help, they was there. And they didn't have to,
Ask you.
they didn't have to beg for anything. We looked after one another. The whole neighborhood.
What do you think? What do you think happened that made those things change, where people don't care about each other?
Not one thing. One thing that stands out to me is a lack of regard for authority. Now, somebody has to be up their head, and you've got to respect it. I know there's some up there that don't deserve it, but I mean, that's a principle. And you're supposed to have people that are worthy, that are up ahead, and they teach the Bible like it is. And a lot of them don't know the Bible, but they know what's right and wrong. And that bothers me some. So I know some people who know the Bible well. They don't practice what they preach. They don't practice it that way. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you is a thing that will work every time. Every time, it'll work.
That's like the saying, if you have good neighbors, you gotta be a good neighbor.
Who are your neighbors on Smith Springs Road? In that neighborhood?
Well, Foster's must have been Louis Foster, no kin to these, lived in a little place that was supposed to have been built for a store. And across the road over there was Frank Cohn's store, and he had added on to it. Well, within a mile, I'd say more or less, there were about 7 or 8 families. That's about it.
Who were they?
Well,
Who lived across the road?
my family
Who lived across the road
and
from?
her family, and there was some Jones,
Some
there was
Brent,
some Johnsons,
Brent,
Peas?
Burnett,
what
and
about the Brents? Miss Brent,
Britt were here.
Sons,
Thornton, Anderson was there.
Brent Anderson's parents.
Anderson was a little later. But Glenn Thornton and Mr. Forrest Thornton were right there on Smith Springs Road.
And Ellis's, Mr. Ellis and Miss Ellis, Evelyn Ellis's parents.
Ben Ellis is on Anderson Road, yeah.
What about the Mullins? Mullins.
Mara
Mullins.
Mullins.
Mullins lived on Anderson Road right across from the log house.
On Smith Spring.
on Smith Spring.
Yeah.
Tell about the time you and Uncle Forrest, your lights went out on your car and you were going up Bell Road.
Well, it was me and Forrest, Herman was along,
Uncle Herman.
and I don't know much, some of the girls must have been along. And this is 2 Ford, and they had to charge it every once in a while. It run down. I'm going up Bell Road from the Smith Springs Road.
Going up that hill.
Well, Forrest, Herman, somebody go up there about 150 feet and strike my max or something.
Strike a match.
Yeah. When you get 98 years old,
We'll see you.
you forget a lot of your first 40 years.
So what'd you have for breakfast today?
Hmm.
What'd you have for breakfast today?
What I have for breakfast today?
Uh-huh.
Egg, and I'm back.
You do remember that?
Probably because they have it every morning.
And coffee.
Yeah, and for lunch you had a favorite. You had something good, didn't you? We brought you something too. Look, this is what you're gonna have for supper. Fish. Catfish.
I didn't get that done.
I know you didn't, because you had chicken.
Yeah, I had
So we didn't want to ruin your meal with the fish.
Okay.
Have that tonight. Is that all right?
Gonna have fish tonight. That's good enough.
Fish is good.
Yeah.
Well, we've taken up too much of your time. You probably need to go take a rest, don't you?
I don't eat fish every day.
You know?
No.
How are you feeling? Are you feeling pretty good?
Feel good.
Yeah?
But 98, I feel real good.
Well, you're not 98 yet.
You look good.
I'm nearer 98 than I am 97.
Yeah, he is, isn't he? Yeah.
You really can't tell much difference, can you?
I can't tell one day or the other.
Can you tell if you feel better one day than you do another?
I don't know, yesterday was yesterday.
Tomorrow,
And
tomorrow,
tomorrow, I ain't never
and
gonna
tomorrow
come.
never comes.
I want to know something else. Do you brush your teeth every day?
No,
Or is that
I
what
quit.
happened? Is that what happened?
I quit.
Oh, my. You know you're a mess.
I could be.
You sure do have a lot of people that love you.
Huh?
You sure do have a lot of people that love you.
I hope so. I've tried to live right. Oh my God, when I awesome wonder, consider all the world thy hands have made. I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout this universe displayed. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art,